Good afternoon. It's Monday, the 20th of January 2020, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. Your host today, Mike Robinson, and myself, Brian Gerrish, and we're joined also by David Scott. David, bring us northern exposure from north of the border. Well, where are we in the world, Mike?
Well, lots to get through. Boris is a very busy boy over the weekend and in the next couple of days. So we'll start off in Berlin with the Libya conference. Now, of course, this is a conference all about putting Libya back together after the same people blew it to bits in 2011. Boris is there, Mr. Macron, Mrs. Merkel, and well, they actually invited the Russians as well. So Ursula von der Leyen was there. Here is Boris with her. She said, as the European Union, we reaffirm that the only sustainable solution to the crisis in Libya is through UN-led mediation efforts that put the needs of all Libyan people at the forefront. Only a Libyan-led and Libyan-owned political process can end the conflict and bring lasting peace. Well, that's quite ironic because, as Sergei Lavrov said, the only reason that there were any Libyans at this Libya conference in Berlin was because the Russians demanded it. Nobody else wanted any Libyans to be there at all. So here is Boris getting off Air Force One, the UK's version. Well, he had a little statement to make, so let's have a listen to that.
You've got a proxy conflict basically being driven by outside forces, whether it's Russia and Egypt and others on one side, Turkey and others on the other side. The European Union is split. Proxy conflicts only come to an end when the external proxies decide they want to bring it to an end. So that's what the UK is arguing for. We're saying, look, come on, folks, this has gone on for long enough. It's a disgrace. Yes, we got rid of Gaddafi back in 2011, but it's time now to move on and to bring Libya together under the UN. That's what we want to do. We want to have a UN-led peace process and stop this jockeying for position. The people of Libya have suffered enough. It's time for the country to move forward.
So if I could welcome David Scott to the programme. David, assuming you've stopped being sick into a bucket there, what are your thoughts about this idea of a proxy war? Is that what Libya is, a proxy war? Seems to me that NATO did a very good job, as we said a minute ago, of destroying the country, and when it suited NATO to do that. And of course, as a result, lots of arms flowed out of Libya into ISIS hands. Is that something that we wanted? Boris doesn't seem to mention that. But nonetheless, he's blaming just about everybody but Britain in this allegation of proxy war.
Yes, that was remarkable. I was amazed by von der Leyen said that the solution must be UN-led and it will only work if it's Libyan-led. That she contradicted herself in two following sentences. And then this whole proxy conflict, well, it's the Russians and the Turks, it's nothing to do with us. Really? It's not credible. He's not standing up there and speaking anything that's recognizable as the truth. So no one will listen to him. It's the same reason that no one listens to Ian Blackford in the House of Commons. There's nothing there that's got any authenticity to it.
Nothing there except the death and destruction, which is most certainly real and occurred on just a horrific scale. And let's also remember, of course, that one of the first organisations that was brought in by the European Union to help supposedly rebuild the Libyan public sector was our old friend, the political charity Common Purpose, paid a vast amount of money by the European Union. So we destroyed the country. We needed to get rid of Gaddafi because he wasn't playing the game. And now Boris is just saying, well, let's pick up the pieces and move on.
Well, let's continue the theme of killing lots of people as quickly as possible, because Davos is going to start tomorrow. There's already been a press conference today, but Davos starts tomorrow. And well, the theme is, the overall theme of the conference is stakeholders for a cohesive and sustainable world. And they say focus of the meeting will be on renewing the concept of stakeholder capitalism to overcome income inequality, societal division, and the climate crisis. And so there's a number of themes here, and the key theme is the one on screen at the moment, how to save the planet. And well, that's going to feature some pretty, well, the usual suspects, perhaps. David, maybe you could make a guess at who the first person I'm about to uncover is. Now, of course, Davos normally sort of older world leaders. So who's going to be the first person that's keynote speaker at this event?
I don't know. Christine Lagarde?
No. You're thinking too old. Too old. It's going to be Greta, of course. Greta is going to be a keynote here, she's an abused child, of course. We've got Jennifer Morgan. Here she is. She's executive director of Greenpeace International. Mark Carnage, the leaving governor of the Bank of England. He is about to become UN Special Envoy for Climate Action and Finance. Al Gore is going to be speaking, and he, of course, wrote An Inconvenient Truth, produced various movies and so on. And then we've got Jane Goodall, who's, she runs a foundation and is, of course, a conservationist. Then, of course, we've got, Nicholas Stern, Lord Nicholas Stern, chairman of the Grantham Research Institute on Climate Change. Frans Timmermans, the EU Commissioner, Executive Vice President for the European Green Deal. The blank space there, because although they don't list Prince Charles as being one of their key speakers, he is giving a special address on this. Now, Greta, of course, has already tweeted out how important this is. And she said, today's business as usual is turning into a crime against humanity. We demand that leaders play their part in putting an end to this madness. Well, David, they could start off putting an end to the madness by maybe silencing her. Might be a good start.
Well, she's being exploited in many ways, and it's quite sad to watch that here you've got someone who's very naive being used for essentially political Marxism and one moral government agendas. I would hope that someone asks Mr. Al Gore how the view is from his £8.9 million ocean view mansion that he bought at the start of the last decade. That would seem to be surely underwater by now.
Well, it's supposed to have been underwater by now, but it doesn't seem to have been. I haven't seen him move out of that yet. But nonetheless, that is the focus of Davos. What is stakeholder capitalism, David?
I had to look it up. Yes, here we go. Are you ready for this? Stakeholder capitalism defined by Investopedia. Key takeaways. Corporations should serve the interests of all of their stakeholders. The focus is on long-term value creation, not merely enhancing shareholder value. It was the norm in the US until Milton Friedman argued that corporate executives are only beholden to owners. Supporters believe it should replace shareholder primacy. So there we go. The corporations will get cuddly and warm again, because they always were, until Milton Friedman made them all nasty. And then there'll be, the children will have gumdrop smiles and play next to rivers of chocolate.
Fantastic stuff. Okay, well, that was covered what happened over the weekend and covers what happens beginning tomorrow. But today, Boris is busy because today is the UK Africa Investment Summit 2020. Great for partnership. So this is fantastic stuff. And Boris was giving his keynote speech this morning. Sorry, I do apologise. There we go. So what was he saying? He's saying that the UK should be the investment partner of choice for African countries, that there'll be new opportunities generated by this summit in Africa for businesses across the UK. And he's announced that the government will no longer provide any direct support for thermal coal mining or coal power plants overseas. So he says that the UK has unique expertise in innovation and technology, clean growth, infrastructure and finance, which will feed Africa's demand for sustainable growth. I'm not aware that Africa is actually demanding sustainable growth. I think this is something which is being imposed on them, but nonetheless, he is citing a number of British companies, Dorset-based Low Energy Designs, which has been installing smart street lighting across Nigeria. The Northern Irish company Lagan, which has won the contract to build a business park in Uganda, and Diageo, which is investing £167 million to build a state-of-the-art, environmentally friendly brewery and several breweries in Kenya and the wider East Africa. So that's fantastic stuff. The message of this of this conference is that really Africa doesn't need coal, it doesn't need to develop, and
They should just drink more.
They should just drink more. That's basically it. So, David, I wasn't aware, as I say, that Africa was demanding sustainable development.
No, and this is a very strange thing to go on, because what's Africa's biggest problem been? They've been excluded from markets in their core produce, which is agricultural, by the barriers put up by the EU. So the first thing we should be looking at is saying, look, we're going to trade with you. We're going to trade, and we're going to trade freely, and we'll all benefit. That should be number one. The next thing that Africa needs, I suspect, it's security and property rights, because you don't build an economy if someone will nick all your stuff. And there's still a lot of that going on in Africa, some here too. Lack of coal-fired power generation, I would have thought, is a long, long way down the list. I'm not sure what the power situation is in Africa, but I rather suspect that in many places, getting an efficient power electricity supply available will be the main priority, not sustainability.
Indeed. Now, something I just want to get your thoughts on very briefly is the fact that Africa now clearly an area of interest for most of the main powers on this planet now. So China, Russia, the European Union, the United States, and the UK all vying for investment opportunities, in inverted commas, and all vying for the opportunity to put their brand of rules and regulations onto Africa. So Africa becoming potentially an area of conflict.
Well, according to the UN, an area of vast, unprecedented population growth, because they're suggesting that the population in places like Europe will fall, and the population in places like Asia will fall, and the population of Africa will increase many times. So they're expecting something big in Africa. Is this a new dash for Africa? Maybe, but it seems subtly different. I don't think it's revealed itself in full yet.
Okay, well, we'll say keep Boris Johnson in your mind while we just take a little look back at something else going on in this country, which of course is the suggestion that Parliament should move. So here we've got The Guardian, and what can we show you here? Well, The Guardian view on Parliament's move: be bold, leave London. With Westminster in need of refurbishment, parliamentarians should seize the opportunity to strengthen links with the rest of the UK. And that, of course, was going back to February 2018. A bit more in the article here. It was talking about this. Says many cities could make a case for having the government, at least on a temporary basis, but it said the transformative effect of cities of culture is well known. Why not cities of politics too? So there's something very interesting being talked about. That's 2018. Let's go back a bit further. So here's The Guardian in 2014, why we should move the Lords and the Commons to Lancaster. There could be no more accusations of a London-centric agenda, and think what a great hotel the Palace of Westminster would make if we kicked all those politicians out. Now, in the image The Guardian produced was a very interesting bit, which is this one here. What was this all about? Well, you got it in the text, because it said going to a great city in the Midlands or the North, Birmingham, Manchester, Liverpool, Leeds, Newcastle, would just create another bubble. There would be tax advantages in doing what some sports governing bodies have done and moving to Dubai. And it could, banking style, try offshore the whole thing to Bangalore to cut costs. And other possibilities, monastic island community, perhaps Iona or Lindisfarne. So they took it into the wacky, but nevertheless, I found it interesting there, Mike, that there was a suggestion out of nowhere that maybe the government would do quite well in Dubai. I think that's there for another time. But who did The Guardian quote? Well, it was our old friend, Lord Adonis. And he said that, sorry, he said that a relocated Lords would allow peers to add something new to the political process. In the north, the voices of manufacturing industry in rural Britain will be far stronger than they are in the southeast. And the journalist of that Guardian article wanted to go further. It seems to me, though, that Adonis does not go far enough. He says selling off the Lord's property portfolio, all that expensive office space along Millbank would raise a huge amount of cash, but the real prize would be to sell off the Palace of Westminster itself. What a hotel that would make. That means the Commons has to move too. So all of this is about the breakdown of our government, and the Guardian at least is absolutely desperate to get this process underway. Stay with us. Here's Lord Adonis tweeting out in the last few hours, and what's he had to say? Well, he says that if the Prime Minister seeks to move the House of Lords to the north, he will have my support. So that's going strong. I've spent my life being told bold policies will never happen. HS2, academies, equal marriage, a Scottish Parliament, a minimum wage would never happen. I thought Brexit would never happen. Moving Parliament north is a small step compared to those. I think it'll happen. And then he boasts that he's about to go on BBC Radio London to discuss moving Parliament to the north. So Boris is overseas, Mike. Attention is overseas at the moment, but what we've got is that we're going to destroy Parliament. And this is now coming up to date. So this is 20th January 2020 with The Guardian. Shipping the House of Lords north is a great idea. Let's send the MPs as well, Simon Jenkins. The significance of the little embedded video clip there is apparently we're to believe that as this lady was giving her talk in the Commons, I think it's the Commons, not the House of Lords, she looks up because she can see a drip of water coming in. So there's a whole video on that. But here we are. This is what The Guardian says. Moving the House of Lords would be largely symbolic, since the House is itself largely symbolic. It would stop being a mix of worthy veterans and party hacks, and a place where seats can be bought along with a right to collect 300 a day. Johnson's reported idea of making it a chamber of the regions is excellent. And David, you'll enjoy this one because they add, if I can bring it up, that was how Parliament functioned in the Middle Ages, and it worked. It staved off revolutions. So The Guardian is proud that we're taking Britain's system of governance back into the Middle Ages, but just to link it back with the Prime Minister, here it is. As for the Commons, reform is no less urgent. MPs must shortly face a decision to vacate the Palace of Westminster. Parliament is not going to matter much over the next 5 Johnsonian years, as the institution is badly in need of a detox. So it appears that The Guardian knows we're going to move Parliament, but also we needn't worry because we don't really need Parliament because we've got Boris Johnson as Prime Minister.
As dictator.
Well, that's what I think. I think we're looking at fascism here. David, have I gone a bit strong on that? But some pretty worrying articles by The Guardian.
Worrying and strange. I mean, they're talking about Parliament from centuries ago. What we've got now, which is mass democracy, is actually very new. It's only existed for maybe 150 years, maybe even less. It really, in the current form, since the First World War, so it's 100 years old, and it's a different thing from everything that went before. Everything that went before, there was a unity in the Crown, which was maintained by getting different interest groups to cooperate. So that was the monarchy. It's now got no place, it would seem. The interests of the land and the countryside represented in the Lords, and the interests of commercial activity represented in the Commons. This is an entirely different thing from what we've got now, which is mass democracy, which is in many ways not the British political system at all. So we're now saying, well, mass democracy is kind of a bit ugly, so we're going to change it a bit into We don't know. Maybe
What?
fascism. It's always popular.
Maybe fascism. Maybe we got a clue from in our chat box today where somebody said that a chamber of the regions is full federalisation. So it's very interesting that we've got the subject of the regions, which was, of course, the EU-driven breakup of UK to create regions instead of our shires, our county basis. And Boris is now saying time to get that put in place.
Absolutely. Now, quick reminder, if you like what the UK Column does and you would like to support us, then please head over to ukcolumn.org/community, and there are options to help us out there. Your help much appreciated and much needed. Now, David, let's move on to Lawrence Fox. And well, you've showed this graphic a week or two ago.
Yes, this was a graphic from The Distance, which was a song that he recorded and we endorsed quite enthusiastically. And in the lyrics to this, he talked about they seek to murder your opinion. Well, this rather came true, and there was some murdering of opinions going on in Question Time.
BBC Question Time. So let's just have a brief look at what happened there.
This is that Meghan has agreed to be Harry's wife, and then the press have torn her to pieces. And let's be really clear about what this is. Let's call it by its name. It's racism. She's a black woman, and she has been torn to pieces.
You can't.
She has been torn to pieces.
It's not racism.
It absolutely
is. We're the most tolerant, lovely country in Europe. Let's celebrate our goodness. Not racism. It's so easy to throw the charge of racism at everybody, and it's really starting to get boring.
What worries me about your comment is you are a white privileged male who has no experience in this.
I mean, can I
I
just...
can't help what I am. I was born like this. It's an immutable characteristic. So to call me a white privileged male is to be racist. You're being racist.
You cannot dismiss.
Okay. I'm not taking a view either way. I'll just add in that Priti Patel, the Home Secretary, also took the view that it wasn't racism. I'm not making a judgment on that either way.
So, David, is it racist to accuse Lawrence Fox of white privilege? And was the BBC presenter, whose name escapes me at the moment, just attempting to be a little bit too balanced?
Well, she's got to do what she's got to do. I thought the key point there was the audience reaction, right? When the woman in the audience, we'll come to who she is in a minute, tried to shut down the guy by saying, "Well, you don't count. You're just a privileged white male." A very sizable part of that audience went, "Oh, dear," right? Because people are tired of it. They've heard enough of it. Now, a little bit more on Lawrence Fox. We covered his song, but we didn't say much about him last time. So this is an article from the Times when he was recording this song. So it's around about just before we covered the song from November 2019. And the Times writes that Fox, "Let the hipsters hate me, I won't dance to their politically correct tune." So he was obviously quite prepared for this. And they write, "Fox is unperturbed when the wokies savage him on social media. Actually, they don't often try it on me because they can't try it on with someone who's not going to apologize. This is key." Or someone who will go, "You're a pompous, self-righteous public school white prick," and you go, "Lovely to meet you too." And they're so shocked you engaged, it stops right there. And I think very interestingly, though, later on in the article, it gets into deeper territory, where the Times interview continues. I reckon Fox's perturbation is rooted in his background. His father, James, now 80, starred in films such as The Servant and Performance, but then became an evangelical Christian, stopping acting for a decade. He and his wife, Mary, a nurse, brought up their 5 children in the faith. And Lawrence Fox says, quote, "I was very rebellious against that, turning up to Bible study wasted, but it affected me 100%. If you have a God, you're raised in the concept of sin and forgiveness. you can project your human imperfections onto that God and ask for repentance. But if you're a religion of one, which is what woke people are, there is no forgiveness. You want to be really compassionate, but anyone who isn't as compassionate as you, you're evil towards. What would happen if you let those people be in charge? Now, Fox prays with his sons every night. I like them to think that life has meaning and it's not just a social construct. So you're seeing there that there's something more substantial to this man, set of ideas that are going to strengthen him as he's attacked hugely on social media. And he's been through the process of thinking through what he's facing, and he's recognized that this strengthens him enormously. Now, when you then get on to the exchanges that's been happening, his Twitter account is just hilarious. I mean, it's just wonderful. But firstly, a quick look at Rachel C. Boyle, because Rachel Boyle was the woman he was arguing with on Question Time. Although she was a Question Time audience member, she's in fact a university lecturer specializing in race and ethnicity research, right? And she says on her Twitter feed here, hashtag I am the hope and the dream of the slave. So there we go. And she's tweeting out, retweeting Billy Bragg, supporting her position that basically white people can't have an opinion on this. And The Guardian, she then went to The Guardian and says she faced online abuse after the Question Time clash with Lawrence Fox. Guardian writes, a mixed-race university lecturer accused of being racist by white actor Lawrence Fox have been bombarded with hate messages via social media, she's told the Observer. Rachel Boyle, researcher on race and ethnicity at Edge Hill University in Lancashire, clashed with Fox during a TV discussion about the press's treatment of the Duchess of Sussex. Since the row, Boyle, 39, said she's received a barrage of online abuse, mainly from people who appear to be of the alt-right via Twitter and email. So who knew? There's millions of the alt-right, right? But on that, they see there's also a little tweet from Lawrence Fox saying, come hang in my timeline, which is very interesting because he's been getting obviously the same sort of stuff and worse, but not running to The Guardian to complain about it. Every now and again, there's some of it pops up and he just retweets it. This next slide here, Evening Standard, Lawrence Fox shrugs off sinister, quote, death threat as Twitter users call for police investigation. So people are getting concerned about this, but Lawrence is not really taking it very seriously because he's got a tweet here from a loving leftist who's full of compassion. You know what would be hilarious? If someone walked up to Lawrence Fox and unloaded a couple of shotgun shells into his face, ending his racist, miserable existence. I'd just laugh and laugh. And Lawrence Fox retweets this and says, I'm not sure Chris is a very nice man, YouTube. All right? And this is the way he's handling it, with a bit of humor, not taking it too seriously. And then the opposition. Now, what's meant to happen here, the standard thing is everyone rounds on him, right? And he apologizes and never works again. That's what's meant to happen. And then everyone learns not to have any opinions which don't comply. This game plan is not working. So firstly, the Actors Union Equity, their ethnic minority committee, came out and called on all actors to unequivocally denounce Lawrence Fox for his comments, the comments you just heard there. And then there was such a backlash against equity, the union then came out and said, no, that wasn't approved by anyone in authority. That was just two rogue members putting out that tweet. And then the subcommittee within equity is, to be clear, contrary to the claim of Equity UK to the stage, our Equity MEM statement was sent out with the consultation of the committee. The committee was consulted, and our statement, now deleted by Equity, represents our united voice. So there's now a war going on in Equity. The Film Actors Guild are not united in this. And on it goes. Now, if you go on to Lawrence Fox's Twitter feed, it's deeply funny. I mean, it's hilarious in places. So here he's retweeting the parody account Titiana McGrath, right? Who's a kind of parody of the leftist viewpoint, right? So she's talking about Equity's members calling on him to be denounced She says, this does not go far enough. I call on all casting directors to blacklist any actors who have not publicly denounced Laws of Fox. As liberals, we must be quick to purge any difference of opinion. Right, and here you see Lawrence wearing a Tatiana McGrath T-shirt that says heterosexuality is a hoax. So the left are going nuts over this, and he's not backing down. Another tweet here, a man called Mike P. Williams says, white privilege does not mean a person has lived an extraordinarily privileged life and is white. That is not what it means by definition. Working class white people can have white privilege. And Lawrence says, keep telling them that. It's an interesting take, right? It's ridiculous, and it's becoming exposed as ridiculous. And then he quoted, you see here, Martin Luther King. He said, this is the position I took last night, and I live by. If you can improve on it, I'm all ears. Or you can keep screeching racist at me, and I can carry on having a good giggle at your expense. The tide is turning. And the quote from Martin Luther King is, we will one day live in a nation where people will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And then, so he tweeted that. The response was, we should never forget that it was views like that of Lawrence Fox that killed Martin Luther King. See how it escalates, right? Well, social justice warriors always double down. It was people that said he was banging on about race, and his banging on was becoming boring. Don't be deceived. Martin Luther King should never be associated with white supremacy ideology, right? So see how it's painted. Just saying Britain's not a racist country, it's painted as white supremacy ideology. So Lawrence retweeted that and said, I'd like to take this opportunity to say that I had nothing to do with the death of Martin Luther King. So again, it's mockery, it's funny, it's entertaining, and it's not working. Now, another thing that I think is quite new here, and it's worth just commenting on. Normally, people in this position are isolated and excluded. So you can go on the BBC and be hostilely interviewed, or you can go on Channel 4 and be even more hostilely interviewed. And that's your choice. Not anymore, because now there are new media channels which are coming up, and they are sympathetic to the views that the woke generation have got it wrong. And they're interviewing, in this case, Lawrence Fox, and giving him a proper chance to express his views and to explore his ideas. So here you've got Spiked did an interview with Brendan O'Neill, Lawrence Fox says, also mentions that he was being interviewed by James Delingpole. And then he's also been this morning on Julia Hartley-Brewer's talk show on what's it now? Talk TV. It's either LBC or Talk Radio, one of the two. Can't quite remember which. Right. And so what these ideas are getting is huge exposure via the new media, who are not as controlled as the old.
Mm.
And these are very important subjects, and we have to say that when people say to us, what can they do? This simple, polite, measured rebuttal over social media is a very powerful tool. I'd encourage it.
Now let's move on to the BBC and what they're up to. And well, Andrew Marr was speaking to Mark Thompson from the BBC yesterday, and he asked how the BBC should the BBC react to what appears to be an unwillingness by some government ministers and this government to take part in BBC interviews at the moment. So the old media is struggling a little bit. So let's just have a brief listen to what Mark Thompson had to say.
Keep calm. Keep calm
and carry on.
And in the end, over time, it seems to me, forging a strong relationship with all the political parties. Elections are quite divisive, and tempers get raised during elections and all the rest of it. Keep calm, emphasise that the BBC's commitment to the nations and regions of this country and its ability, it's the only truly globally known British media brand. The ability to reach out on behalf of the UK with our talent, our ideas to the entire planet. I think the government's got very exciting ideas, actually. I mean, what everyone thinks about Brexit, about what this country could do and the opportunity to be seized, in terms of investment in some of the less advantaged parts of the country, in terms of keeping every nation in the UK properly, not just properly, as we're served with that news about themselves, but about the whole of all of the other nations, the whole UK. But above all, getting out to the rest of the world, I think the BBC could be an ally in the government's agenda.
So he would like to see the BBC become an ally in the government's agenda. Well, I just wanted to let people think about what the BBC is with respect to the government. So here is the transparency data for the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, spending over £25,000. Now, October 2019, this is the latest figures available. But frankly, the spending on the BBC in these reports is pretty much the same month on month. So this was published on the 20th of December 2019. And the first line item that we find is that they have spent £7 million to the BBC. That's a programme spend. We don't know what programme that's for. It isn't possible to find out. Let's see what else they gave the BBC. Well, here is £222,917 to BBC Media Action. Another £194,840 to BBC Media Action. Another £37,362 to BBC Media Action. Another £78,372 to BBC Media Action. £40,678 to BBC Media Action, and £27,388 to BBC Media Action. So, when the head of the BBC is telling the world that he sees that the BBC could become an ally to the British government, it seems to me
more of an ally.
More of an ally, yes. Yeah. So, David, this is a monthly spend. The Foreign Office, and that's just one government department, giving lots of money to the BBC, and of course, not just to the BBC, but the BBC acting as an ally, as we pointed out on Friday's programme when Reuters outed themselves on this, that during the 60s and the 70s, the BBC had acted as effectively a money laundering exercise for the British Foreign Office, for the British government, to give money to Reuters.
And it was something like 2.4 million at the time, Mike, something like $3.7 million.
Well, no, they said at the time it was £350,000, but that's of course take inflation into account. I'm not sure what the final amount is, but nonetheless, it was a significant amount of money. And David, the BBC has been acting on behalf of the British government for decades. Well, since its inception, really, it is funded wholly by the British taxpayer, but with additional money coming from government departments directly. So it's really ridiculous of Mark Thompson to suggest that becoming an ally of the government is something that the BBC should aspire to.
Yes, I was just quickly checking on what BBC Media Action's turnover is. Income last year, 37.7 million. And by the sounds of the figures you read out there, that's almost all from the British government. So that's a sizable bung. I would have thought that even in BBC Lovey Land, you can buy quite a lot of loyalty for 37.7 million.
Yes.
Well, enough loyalty to help overthrow the legitimate government of Syria anyway. Let's have a quick look at what else the BBC has been up to. And we had this very, very squidgy headline from the BBC themselves. Sarah Montague, radio presenter, confirms £400,000 pay settlement with the BBC. So good news for those being overpaid by the BBC. And of course, what they're doing, well, all of this is being sold on the lie of gender equality and women's rights. So you've got to stick up for this lady because she's been really, really badly treated by the BBC. This is a key quote from her, that she was incandescent with rage when she discovered that she was being paid less than her Today programme co-hosts. We'll come back to that in a moment. She said she suspected she was paid less than colleagues, but felt some moral high ground that taking less of the licence fee than others. My £133,000 wage for hosting today was a very good wage for a job that I loved, but I had not clocked just how professionally damaging it would feel to know that I was earning less than my Today colleagues. What a fool I was. I felt like a sap. When I discovered the disparity in my pay and conditions, I was advised that rectifying it could run into millions. I chose not to accept such sums from the BBC, but I did want some recognition that they had underpaid me. So last year, after a long period of stressful negotiations, I accepted a settlement of £400,000 subject to tax and an apology from the BBC for paying me unequally for so many years. So this is the BBC gravy train. She gets a £400,000 settlement. We don't know how much she's being paid now, but presumably a lot more, Mike. This was some of the names listed. John Humphreys earning up to 650,000. Nick Robinson, no relation of yours, of course, 250 to 299,000. Michel Hussein, 200 to 250,000. Justin Webb, a mere 150 to 999 pounds. And earlier this month, BBC Samira Ahmed won an employment tribunal which she brought against the BBC in a dispute over equal pay. She claimed she was underpaid by £700,000. This happens, Mike. It's shocking, absolutely shocking. So let's ask some questions. Sarah Montague said that a £133,000 wage was a very good wage for a job she loved. She felt on the moral high ground for not taking more than the license fee. She did not want to take millions from the BBC. So if she was happy with 10,000 plus a month, why didn't she speak out against the excessive sums being paid to her colleagues? Why didn't she take them to task on the outrageous abuse of public money? Well, I'm going to suggest it was this. The clues that incandescent with rage, that demonstrates in my mind that this woman was just filled with hate and envy and greed, and they got more than she did, and she needed that money. David, we're very short of time, but there's something deeply unpleasant in this little story. This woman was content with a sum of money that most people can only dream of. And then once the greed comes in, and that greed is fed by the BBC to keep her quiet, to help other women not.
Yeah, who is she? I don't recognise her.
That's because she wasn't paid enough.
That's because she's a radio presenter, David. But you know, radio presenters get paid significant amounts of money.
Some of the other people on that list were radio presenters. I recognise them. So she's not made an impact on me. I just say, if you'd show me a photograph or even the name, it wouldn't have twigged who she was. So maybe that's part of the reason. Maybe she's just not as much of a leading personality in presenting the programs as some other people, which would seem to be a reason for her not being paid the same.
But do you think that £250,000, £600,000 is an appropriate amount of money for a radio presenter that does, you know, maybe three early morning shifts of 3-hour programs? So that's nine hours a week, probably on average, is what they're doing. Okay, they've got prep time on top of that, but nonetheless, it seems like a lot of money.
It does seem like a lot of money, and you do wonder whether that's what they actually need to pay to keep them, because what's the competition? But okay, you know, LBC might nick one or two, but that would kind of be that. Yeah, it does seem a lot of cash. And yes. I wonder if the talents in these areas are really that rare.
I don't think so. Anyway, look, we're completely out of time, David. But let's just mention this because I want to get your thoughts on this. Now, on Friday, we were showing the little bit of video of Nancy Pelosi signing the articles of impeachment that were heading over to the Senate, and her use of multiple pens in order to do that. And of course, these pens, one letter at a time, signed. These pens became mementos that were handed out to people. But somebody pointed out on Twitter, actually, that if you looked closely at the pens, well, first of all, they're signed Nancy Pelosi on the side in gold. But if you look at the part of the pen that you hold, they bear some striking resemblance to a rifle bullet. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
I actually think that's deeply disturbing. That would suggest that if this doesn't work, the next step is something more serious and permanent to remove Donald Trump from office. I find that worrying.
Yes. Well, are we overreading this?
No, I don't think, apart from anything else, if you said it was black humour, it's exceptionally dark, and I would say sadistic, that you're into politics and you're reverting to this level of, what is it? Covert threat. Yeah.
Not so covert, but anyway, let's end with this then. David, you wanted to highlight this quote from Lawrence Fox.
Yes, from the song The Distance, for the wrong to rule, the good must just stand idly by. And that's no lie.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, there you have it. Reassure our audience that today's news has been produced on a budget of less than £650,000, £10,000 a week, or whatever else the BBC gets. So if you like what we're doing, stay tuned to UK Column, and if you can subscribe, it does help. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.